Hello, and welcome back to the first episode of 2025 on Let's Talk Football Careers. And today I'm joined with Iain Munro. Welcome, Iain. How are you doing?
Fine, Barry.
Good, and thanks for joining us. We've got quite a career to run over here, Iain. I believe you've had 419 league matches spread over St Mirren, Hibs, Rangers, St Mirren again, Stoke, Sunderland, Dundee United and Hibs. So we've got quite a lot to run through. You've got 31 goals and 7 international caps as well.
Yeah, the one thing I never did, I never took stock of everything. I probably know more about how many games I played at school than I played pro.
Never totaled it up.
I never kept an eye. I was once told as a kid from one of the experienced players that publicity is a great thing till you start to believe it. So
knocks you off. Well, yeah. Could you just give us a wee run through from when you were growing up as a young lad, just till you joined St Mirren, please?
I was at Drumchapel Amateurs, and Drumchapel was obviously, one of the best places to start. Douglas Smith had it, and John Wilson was the guy that took our team, and it was well run. And I was always told, it was when I set up the thing in America, that when you go to something, it's the culture, and the culture at Drumchapel, run by Douglas Smith, was very strict. You'd have a collar and tie. You were well treated. You were taken into Reed's tea room on a Saturday when you finished your school game, and you were given. And that's where it started. And we went to the Scottish Cup final. We played Belfield, Kilmarnock, and we beat them 5-3. And after the game, I was in the bath, and wee Bobby Bell, who was the physio at St Mirren, Bobby was also a physio at Drumchapel and did a lot of work for them. Yeah. And Bobby had told the manager that he should talk to me. So after the game, Malik Wright called me upstairs, out the bath, get dried, and he offered me going into my last year at school part-time. And so in my 6th year at school, while I was playing for the school in Drumchapel, I was training with St Mirren twice.
Yeah. And who was the manager at St Mirren at that time?
Alec Wright.
Was that Alec Wright that was the manager? Because I know your second spell, you had another famous manager, which we'll come on to at St Mirren, but I was just checking up there. So who was on that squad then? I mean, was that quite a heavy good squad at the time as well then when you joined them?
Well, I mean, when the first time, it was as a provisional signing, and they had other boys, Bobby McCain, Gordon McQueen, Ali McLeod. They had a lot of good kids, and I mean that was the way young Scots boys got a chance. Just looking at the Old Firm game the other day, and there's about 3 Scotsmen in the park.
Yeah, it's so difficult to come through as a Scots player now in Scotland.
Yeah, and that's the pressure on managers now in the Premier League, and in the first division then there was 18 teams, and there was very few non-Scots that were involved. So for young Scots players coming through, there was an opportunity.
More of a pathway now. I think since the reserve league's gone as well, that's always made things a bit difficult.
Yeah, and again in those days, managers got a chance. They were at clubs for 2 or 3 years, and they got an opportunity to settle in. Now they get 10 games, and if they won their 10 game, they could be out of a job. And it's because of the amount of money involved in the game, and I feel it's a shame for some young players and for some young managers who don't get the chance to get their thoughts and stamp their football on it.
Definitely. And can you remember who you made your debut against for St Mirren?
Sorry?
Can you remember who you made your debut against?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, who was that?
I was on the bench it was the 1st of January 1970, and it was Airdrie, and Airdrie had a strong team at that time, and I come on for the last 7 or 8 minutes, And you know, I kicked the ball
Did
twice.
you have family there watching that? Did you have family or friends watching you?
No.
No, it was just yourself just pointing them back down the road. I just made my debut.
Yeah, I was just, you know, I used to go into training myself, and that was it. Nobody there that day.
No, it's different times. I mean, when did you have an agent through your playing career, or
Did I have a
football agent? Did you ever have an agent through your career when you were playing?
Oh, no.
No, because
there wasn't any money in the game, Barry.
No, it was so different, eh?
When I went across there, the boys were saying, "What, you know, you played in the Premier, the First Division in England, and you were international. Why are you still involved in the game?" I says, "In my day, the boys that came through and played a long time, I says they get paid decent money eventually. I says, but it wasn't money that you could retire."
No, and the attitude was different back then as well. It was all about your career will find you the money rather than your money chasing. Eh? If you played well enough, you earned your money as it came, I think. Eh?
Yeah, but I think the money's been good in terms of, you know, if they put it away and make sure the players when they're finished. But I think some young players are now getting too much too early.
Yeah, before they've even kicked the ball in. Aye. Sorry.
And that can affect them in terms of you know, getting to the next level.
Yeah, 100%.
Might be a reason that the young players that are not getting the opportunity now. You know,
I mean, you see so many young players going on loan, and you know they kind of seem lost a bit. Eh? There's no pathway through anymore. Eh? It's so difficult for Scottish football players coming through.
Yeah, it's difficult everywhere just now. I mean, football suffered in the same way as other things, and the pandemic didn't help.
No.
You know, I know a lot of clubs that cut back in their youth policy through the pandemic, you know, because they just didn't have the money to run with that.
Yeah. And I think it's now we're starting to suffer. You're not seeing as much talent coming through, and any talent that is there has been shipped abroad. Eh? You see it always tapping into Scottish young players and making them good, you know, good profits and better players.
That's the future of our game. You know, if you've got to bring people into the country, it's going to cost you more money.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're not going to give kids a chance, if you have a youth policy, it's the cheapest way to do it. But unfortunately, it takes time. And at the moment, a lot of coaches and managers haven't been given the time to see them through.
And then that's probably where we're suffering, you know, due to that. It's all coming for the lack of time and then the lack of opportunities, because no manager who knows he's maybe only got a dozen games to prove himself is going to bring in a young player, is it? Yeah. It's a young player that's suffering, eh?
That's exactly it. It's the fact that they're not going to get the time. And, you know, if you were there for 5 or 6 years, and most managers were in for a while, and, you know, when I look back to when I went to football at first, nobody spoke about the manager.
No.
They spoke about the players, and then, of course, when more games are on the TV and when they start to interview, then, you know, the manager becomes the focal point.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember I used to go and watch Motherwell because my dad he didn't want me to take me to watch Rangers or Celtic. So, and my uncle supported Motherwell, and we went there at the time of St John and Pat Quinn. And I mean, I can still tell you all the players in the team. And, you know, I had my cousins were older than me, took me to football, and I had Subutio. They gave me the Subutio board and the old turf, and I never had any Subutio men, but I had marbles. And I had a tin full of marbles, the blue and yellow, and everyone was a team. And if you picked a marble out there, and there was about 150 or 160, I could tell you what player it was. That was
simpler times, eh? Much simpler times, eh?
Yeah, and I don't think that when over there, what we tried to do with the kids was not teach them the game, but teach them the love of the game.
And I think that they've got to fall in love with that first, eh?
You know, there's kids at 8 years of age and 9 years of age, and same here now, doing 3 nights training a week. Now, my first training session when I went to St Mirren, it was when I was 16, 17. I mean, even at Drumchapel, we trained at Annie's Land School, and in the winter you couldn't train outside because it was dark, and you weren't allowed to play football in the gym. So we just met and we played head handball and just got together. But it was more about, you know, forming a culture than getting any, you know, instruction that made you better practically.
So just enjoying it first day, and then obviously, like, then once you enjoy it, you'll put more into it, and you'll probably reap the rewards more as well, eh?
Yeah, and that's what we tried to do over there. And you know, one of the boys said to me, and I says, look, our job is not to teach the kids the game, it's teach them the love of the game. I says, and if they love the game, they'll do it more often. If they do it more often, then hopefully they'll become better.
And it's an ethos that seemed to run right through up until about the 90s, and then, like you say, when the money came in there, it all changed, eh?
And again, you think of, look at the Scots players we've produced. You know, you go back to Jimmy Johnson and Dennis Law, John White, you know, terrific players, and then Jim Baxter, and even Kendall Dalglish, the group that I was in, out of the squad of 20 players, there was about 14 of them had either a European Cup medal, a Cup Winners' Cup medal, or a UEFA Cup medal. Now you have a look at the present Scottish squad, and there's only Andy Robertson that
can hold his cell, eh?
You know, get a chance of getting one of these medals. So there's something happening, and you don't suddenly stop producing players. You know, so when I played in the youth tournament, the European Youth Tournament in 1970, Roy Small took the team, you know, because Roy did the coaching at Largs, and I was at Gordon Hill, you know, doing my PE course. Roy was a lecturer. And before we played, what do you call them, Holland in the semi-final, you know, he used to sit and talk to me, and he'd say, have you seen any of these boys? And I went, no. Because in those days, you never got Dutch games on TV. Now you can watch everything. And he says, well, they're really good. He says, they didn't qualify for the 66 World Cup, didn't qualify for the 70 World Cup. He says, put in place a youth policy. And this is the first players from 4 years ago that went through that. Now, in that Dutch team was Neeskens, Rep, Rijsbergen, and the Van der Kerkhoff ones, who all then went on to play in the 74 World Cup final. And we had
people like 50 years ago, eh?
Brownlee, Alan Ruff, Graham Souness, Arthur Graham.
That must have been a step up. See, when you went to Scotland and you were playing beside Graham Souness and even Alan Ruff and all the different players that you're, what a step up, and that must have been. I mean, how did you find out about your first Scotland call-up? How did that all come about? So it was Jock Stein, eh? It
was Jock Stein. And when I was at Hibs, we used to get the train, Tony Higgins, Joe Harper, Ali MacLeod, myself, we get trained through from Glasgow. And we used to buy a paper, and the boy Jimmy Flaherty that sold the papers, Flax, he'd only one eye. You might not remember him from Glasgow, but he was a Celtic fan. He was a great mate of Jock Stein's. And after we had beaten Liverpool 2-1 in the UEFA Cup, he told me, he says, would you play for Celtic? I said, why would I not play for Celtic? He says, well, I just thought the way things are in the west of Scotland, you know, you're a Protestant, and
so different now.
I says, I'm a football guy. I says, I'm not that way inclined. I says, you know, he says, well, he says, the big man's just asked me, would that be a problem? And I said, no. So the next morning he said to me, right, just to keep playing away, sit tight and do it. And he says, the chance comes. And I thought, fine. Now I was happy at Hibs. Everything was going great. And that was, what, 70, 75. Jock was in a car crash.
Aye, that's right. Aye.
It broke in the papers that one of the things he was going to do, I didn't know how long he would be out, was, take me from Hibs to Celtic if it didn't a chance to do it. So Rangers, then with Jock been out for so long, Rangers stepped in, and I ended up going to Rangers. But I mean, it was as well. But
so different, so different times,
yeah.
You had a good time at Hibs though the first time round. I mean, you finished second in the league three seasons in a row. I think it was only Rangers and Celtic, Which I mean, when you look at that now,
a terrific team, and it's we got crowds of about 14,000, 15,000. A good game. Other times it was maybe 9 or 10. So in those days, you had no money from sponsorship. It was through the gate. So obviously Rangers and Celtic getting 50, 60,000 people, it was easier for them to hold on to the players and go and replace a player as if somebody get injured and, have a bigger squad of players. And nowadays, you look and only a fraction of clubs' income is coming through the gate.
Yeah, so I mean, it's like you see it. Even I was watching the darts the other day, and the darts players are covered in sponsorship. All of them, and even the dartboard and the surround, everything's a sponsorship nowadays. But it's a different way of the world again. But you enjoyed your first spell at Hibs, and like you said, you went on to Rangers. You moved there. It was Jock Wallace that signed you. But I've got to hear you only played about a dozen games, 11 games, maybe even. With Rangers,
I didn't. They had just won the treble.
And around about John Gregg transition as well, was it the way around about that time?
John was there. John was playing, and at that time when we played Hibs, Eddie would, Sandy Jardine used to make it hard. Arthur Duncan was wide in the left, and Arthur was very quick, but so was Sandy. So it didn't quite have the same effect, the way we played. So when we played Rangers, what Jock would do, or what Eddie would do, was he would play Arthur through the middle,
right,
to exploit the spaces behind Greg and behind Sandy Jardine, and he wide in the left. And I was a fit. The one thing I had was I had a decent engine, so I could get up and down and match Sandy up and down. So I would do that, and when we get the ball, I would just play it in behind Sandy for Arthur to run.
Right.
When Jock took me to Rangers, he played me outside left.
Yeah, and you're like, wait, they need to be back a bit here.
And I remember I went to Coventry as a kid. My pal that stayed down from me, I came from View Park, Nuddingston.
Yeah.
And we used to play in the street. There'd be about 16 of us, and 8 of the boys went pro.
There you go.
John Robertson, Tommy Coatley that signed for Arsenal, Lee Stevenson that played for Hibs, his young brother John. So Ian Scanlon, John Robertson, 4 doors from.
Madness, There was a lot of that. A lot of these all players that made it, like you said, for your era especially. You see that there was like 3 or 4 all came out the same villages, and they obviously all knew each other, joined the same teams and such like. But it's gone are the days when you see even kids playing Kirby anymore. With the ball on the curb and just throwing it about you. It's all indoors games now.
That's why they say, but the culture, the culture comes from what you grow up in. So the fact that, I grew up in View Park, I had no coaching. My first real session that, a coach, I was about 16 or 17. But I played in the street, and my next door neighbour, Tommy Coatley, Tommy played for Morton and then went to Arsenal.
Yep.
And we were playing the close between the 2 houses. It was terraced houses. And you had the 2 end terrace, and then all the other ones had the close between them. And I would go in, and my dad would hear the ball bouncing against the wall. He'd say, "Are you playing in there? Who are we playing with?" I says, "Tommy." And Tommy was 3 years older. He says, "What was the score?" I says, 21-0.
Just keep scoring.
I wasn't caring. I didn't care.
No, you're just playing football and enjoying it.
Tommy. and Tommy would help me become better.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's you learning from such a young age, but also like you said, the key thing is you were enjoying yourself. Eh?
Aye, and it wasn't, you never did any skills, but if there was two you went out, and my wee pal Pat that stayed down the street, I would go with Pat over to the playing field and behind the goal. Never played on the park.
No.
Behind the goals, and the two of us, we would put a couple of bricks down. We'd play a shooting game. Somebody would come and join us. One would go and goal. We'd play 3 and in. Both 3 goals became the goalkeeper. A 4 game, and you played 2v2 at shooting. A 4 game, you put somebody in goals, somebody out.
Yeah, and your friend circle just grew with people just coming in and just saying, "Aye, I've got friends yet that we met them like the exact same setup." Eh?
Yeah,
it's
fun, and it wasn't about when you did play a game or you played the street down the road, and get the boys together, and it'd be 6v6, 7v7. You weren't interested. It wasn't about the score. If you somebody was in 5 or 6-0, you stopped the game and changed the sides. And what you wanted was to win a great game. 12-11 or 16-15, and your mother would be a draw, 12, and your mother would come get your tea, and the next goal was
the winner, and that was good enough. Aye, that was it. But I can see. Did you play right when you went back to St Mirren? Right? Did you play in the Anglo-Scottish Cup versus Bristol City? Did you play in that game? 5-0 over 2 legs. That was a big scalp then. Eh? That was under Alex Ferguson, I believe. Eh? That
was my first game. I was on when I was at St Mirren the first time, because I was a PE teacher and I was in. Tony Connell that played in the team. Tony was the PFA man. So, and in those days they didn't recognise, the PFA, and so the club couldn't collect the money, so they'd appoint a player, and Tony at the end of that year was leaving the club. So he said to me, "Look, you're a teacher, you're organised, could you collect the money?" So I collected the money and I had to take it in, and I was on the meetings, and Alex Ferguson was on, and Buck McGarry and Benny Rooney, and and it was all boys. I was 17, 18, and it was boys that were in their 30s. So I used to sit at these meetings, never say a word, and and learn so much from being in that committee with Fergie.
Yeah, and I think that set you up for your coaching career as it came on later on. I mean, just being around all these people and just hearing all the information they've got. But what was Ferguson like? I mean, what age would he be? He would have been in his sort of late 30s, eh? How old is that?
Does he now? I think he's 10 years older than me. And I'm
so there you go. It just shows, eh? And someone I did want to touch on to, right, was your Scotland debut. Was it, and you had to mark or play against Maradona.
Yeah.
The first year we seen him play was actually in that game, though, wasn't it? You just heard about him, wee bits and bobs, eh?
Oh, that's what I'm saying. You in those days, you never got world football. You got a game on a Saturday night and a game maybe on a Wednesday night, and you maybe get highlights. But they did send 6 lots of cameras or 40 round everybody. So, I mean, the same when I was at Hibs and we played in Europe. You never sat and watched videos of games because they just weren't available.
You'd get wee bits, say, they're a tight opposition who like to counter-attack, and that was it. That was what you had to work with.
The manager, Eddie Turnbull, was very good. And somebody told me about Jock Stein. I think it was Billy McNeil that said to me, when Jock Stein went to Celtic, he would go to these European games, he'd take a piece of paper and he would draw a field on it and have a formation, and then he would just draw lines about where the ball was. So if the ball went centre to left all the time, there was a lot of these lines. So it told you patterns of play.
It's unreal. It's so different for all this sports science and all this technology that we've got now. Eh?
Well, Big Jock was years ahead of his time, you know, in the way he did things.
I mean, between him and Alec Ferguson, were they the best? Obviously, the best you've worked alongside. You went more for them than anybody.
Oh well, I was lucky, Barry, because I had Jock Stein, I had Alec Wright, who was very good at the time. Yeah. Eddie Turnbull, that again one of the best. I had Jim McLean and Walter Smith.
Yeah. Did you have Pat as well? Pat Stanton. Sorry, am I saying that right? Pat Stanton as well.
Yeah.
Aye, I thought that. Aye. And then you had Alan Durbin as well, eh?
Alan Gordon, Jimmy O'Rourke, Alec Edwards.
Aye. You know, I must bring up though a tackle that you made against Everton. Do you recall the one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That was, you never even got booked for that, did you?
No.
Absolutely. No, I seen that.
Aye, it was, the ball bounced up and I was going for it, and I've got it. It's about waist high and he's not going to get there. Right. And he stuck his knee out and he just got to the ball before and I hit his knee, and it was.
Was he really bad injured after it? Was it a bad injury or?
Oh, it was a terrible injury.
Oh, was it? I didn't know.
And it was Andy King, Everton. I went into the dressing room after. They nearly lynched me when I went in, but I went in the dressing room after the game and apologised.
It was the mental. Aye. It's mental, and I mean an injury like that. I mean, it keeps you at the game for years back then. See now, broken legs and that. You're 3-4 months, whatever it is. But back then it was.
There was publicity that Andy would be in the next England squad.
Oh, Christ.
So, again, that was it. And I know I had a pal that knew Andy King, you know, and he worked in the steel industry, and he stayed down close to where Andy stayed. And he phoned me up and he says, "Well, this guy hates you." I says, I can understand. I says, but it happens.
It happens, it's football, I mean, it happens, eh? But you moved, when you were with Sunderland, you worked under Alan Durbin. What was he like to work for?
He was a young manager, and he was, when I went to America, they were on about doing everything right, and the players would come in at that. And I said, look, it's about forming your culture, not just on the day of a game or just one thing, you know. I said, because you would think that when you went to play somewhere and you were going a distance, you would go the day before, you would stay overnight and then play the game the next day. Yeah. I said, well, when I was at Sunderland, Alan Durbin, we would go to London. I says, and Alan would take you down in the morning of the game. You'd be down there. The bus would take about 6 hours. You'd be down at about 1:30, 1 o'clock, 1:30. Go in, get your lunch, and go straight to bed. Have 3 hours, get up, go in early to the ground, and you do just a slightly longer warm-up. I says, we never lost in London. We did that. I says, so there you go. I says, it's, you know, he liked after the game that we would go back and we'd stay overnight, and he would take us out somewhere, and we'd go and the boys would have a couple of drinks and go back.
So team building, eh?
Aye, so that was, you got there, you know, 3-4 times a year. But if it was away games and it was a night game, then obviously if it was a day game, that he took you down the day before. But any night games we played there, we travelled down in the day of the game and stayed overnight and lost. So
it worked, it's like going back to, I mean, it's sometimes just a mentality thing as well. If you get in that structure and this is what works for you, they're like, right, well, we've nailed it here. We don't need to change it.
And it's only a small part of what you do, and that was the main thing about when we set up the thing in Pennsylvania, you know, in Philadelphia, when we started that. It was about creating a culture, and it was, if the players misbehaved, if they missed training, and if they could go, the boys would come and say to me, I've got a baseball practice. And I said, you're in the team at school? Yeah. I says, well, you go to your practice. But, you know, what? I says, you'll catch up. They think if they miss a training session, that's the end of the world. But it's not.
No. And again, the respect as well then as well.
Yeah. But we put too much pressure on players that too early.
And it's knocking their mentality and knocking them off their game. Then they can't play.
Yeah. And again, you know, an 8-year-old, they're now over the club I was at in the programme we put up. They now started teams at 8 years of age. So at 9, they've got maybe 10 or 12 players at each age group. I never had any teams. What I did was I set up and I did what we did. We played with our school team. And if you maybe played in the afternoon, you played with your amateur team. Yeah. And if you were any good, you maybe trained one night a week or one night a fortnight, you know, at Motherwell or London or somewhere.
Yeah.
And you did that. But you never tied yourself to a club as a 7 or 8 year old.
No. I mean, I've seen it with friends that have got kids and that, and they just jump about clubs and there's no plan for them. And it's the way to get through is impossible. It's so difficult.
Well, I was lucky. I was lucky I came through at the right time, you know, because in the St Mirren team, when I got in there, I was training with boys like Cammy Murray, Hughie McLaughlin, Tony Connell, Willie Fulton.
Proper pros, ahead of their time.
Was Bobby Adamson, Bobby Pinkerton, Peter Kane, Jim Story that played with went down south, and he played with Airdrie. And they would, if you did the wrong thing or were too smart at training, they'd clip you around the ear. You know.
And you knew right away. I mean, I speak to, it's a different, maybe just a generational thing as well, but I speak to a lot of, you know, ex-pros that are maybe like, say, 55 or over, and they all say the same. They got the respect, they cleaned the boots, you know, they turned up at proper times and made sure that all the values that were taught to them were followed. Whereas now, it just seems a free-for-all. It really is.
And if you wanted to get into the dressing room, you had to knock the door. You'd knock the door and walk in. You knocked the door and you waited.
Yeah.
And if they were ready, they opened the door and invited you in. And that's so. There was a way there was a culture that was set, and there was a pecking order. They weren't long in letting you know that there's a million kids at 10, 11 and 12 that are good. There's 1 in 100 that come through. Actually get the full distance.
Yeah.
You know?
You've got to nurture the ones that you've got to try and give the opportunities to, you know, the best ones. It's mad, but can I make a wee check on your, when you went into your manager career, you were with Dunfermline, you signed Billy Davies, a fellow, a previous guest that I've had on, but you signed him for Leicester when you were at Dunfermline. And I mean, Billy says himself, he says it was a difficult time at that time in Dunfermline, but what's going on in the background and things, but how did that all sort of work? Because I mean, I'm going back, I was only 10, 11 year old, but I'm from that area.
It's now. You know, Big Jim had just gone up. He'd taken the team from the fourth year right up, and Gregor Abel was his assistant, and I was down at Labs doing my A licence, and Jim had gone down and he'd spoken to Andy Roxburgh, and Andy, he was losing Gregor because Gregor couldn't go full time.
Right.
And I just had to stop playing because of my hip injury. And Andy recommended that, and Jim took me there. And, you know, it was great. Things went, it was hard the first year, you know. After that, there was he was successful in what he did. He was terrific. He did that. I took the training every day. And obviously, there comes a point where, as the club, you finish 8th, and the supporters don't now want 8th. That's not a success. Excuse me, just to stay in the league. They want to go up there, then they want to get into Europe. So it was getting to a stage that the players we signed, you weren't going to talk them through a game and get there. You had to have the better players. and Jim had differences of opinion on how it should be done, and we fell out, and you know.
And he's fell back in again, or you not talk? Is do you not talk at all now?
I've seen. I mean, I met him in Florida one time on holiday, and I have no idea. I talked to Jim because I mean, Jim did what he thought was right, and I was trying to do what I thought was right for the club.
And that's it. And you both had them filming at heart, eh?
And he gave me the run of the place and doing it, and you know, so when we argued, he thought I should stand down, and that done for him. And I didn't want to be the manager. I love the coaching, you know.
Yeah, I mean that's came right for your PE days, that as well, eh?
Aye, and we should have been sensible enough at the time to sort it out, and we did.
Yeah, it was a shame because even now Dunfermline seem to be they're in the wrong league. Dunfermline, they've got all the facilities, all the fans, everything there to be in the top league, and they just seem to be all over the place, eh, with the board issues and everything at the moment, eh?
Well, as I say, I don't know what's happening just now. I know that Billy Braisby's in there, you know, and his dad was a director. So I know that the people that ran the club, the director, Morgan, and the chairman, they were terrific. You know, and they didn't. What you don't want is the club has to last. And it was the same that went to Wraith Rovers. The supporters own the club. They keep the club going, and nobody has a right to put the club in so much debt that it's old. And the directors did a great job of getting the clubs to compete at a level. We're getting crowds of 8,000-10,000.
Yeah, I mean the 90s, Dunfermline and Wraith Rovers, and you know you worked with Hamilton and that as well. But Dunfermline and Wraith Rovers, that they were where they should have been. They were performing well. They were getting into cup finals, Sco Cup finals, Scottish Cup finals, etc. Holding their own in the league a wee bit, and then it just seemed to just dropped in. Again, it's another clubs that have never recovered from COVID properly as well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Dunfermline at that time, we had a decent youth policy, and with people like Tony Docherty, that's now at Dundee. You know, I had a wee scout that worked for Fergie, that then came and worked for, you know, Harry McIntosh, who got me boy in the Kilbride area. And Tony and a boy Eddie Cunnington that played for the first team. Jackie McNamara. You know, George O'Boyle. We got good young players, and what we were willing to do and what Jim did was he gave them a chance. You know, and he was strong enough, and he had a good enough bond with the fans that, you know, even if the team didn't do well and he was giving kids a chance, he never get any abuse from the fans. We're always I normally got the abuse.
Yeah, that's what you were there for. That's what you were.
That's fine, as long as it doesn't go on the players, and especially when you players. So the directors, you can't expect directors just to bankroll it the whole time and not get anything back, you know, because they've got families and their money is well. So we'll have to make a way of you know, making it pay for itself.
Yeah, find the right balance for both, but as it is, there's so many clubs in Scotland and even in England now that they all seem like they're not where they should be. You know, they should be up a level, but there's just so many small things holding them back. But
and it's difficult, Barry, because we've got things like this. You get podcasts, which in my day you never got. So after games, you've got instant access. I mean, there used to be the Evening Times and the Citizen on a Saturday night, the green and the pink, and you got first division games, second division games, junior games, and amateur games, school games. You know, you get reports in them all. But now, if you're a journalist, but time 5 o'clock comes, you're a journalist. Everybody knows the scores and all the stories.
It's like what you were talking about, you know, you had to knock on the manager's door back in your day, but effectively they can just sit on their phone and tag the manager or whatever it's called, and the agent deals with it before you know it. It's all out there seconds after it. It's mad.
You never had people following you unless it was you were a Rangers player and or is it Glasgow and you get one hit. There was nothing. There was no social media and publicity the way it is now.
No. But would it be possible, just before we round up, if you could just tell us how your journey to America, what's all happened there? Because I knew one of the first places they sent you was to Barcelona, I believe,
Yeah.
And again, going back to like Holland and Spain, they always had youth in place, way ahead of other countries, But if you could let us sort of inform us how that all came about, please.
Well, when I went over there, I really went with these agents to start the thing, and there was a hurricane, and it put the project back, because it destroyed the thing they were going to buy and do up and put kids in there. So Bobby Clark phoned me. Remember the Aberdeen goalkeeper? Bobby was a coach out at Notre Dame, and he had been a coach at in New England and at Dartmouth, and he phoned me. He says, "Look, I had a young boy in my team. His father's a multi-millionaire." He says, and he wants to start an academy, and his name was Richie Graham, and Richie had played for Bobby. And Richie just told me that Bobby used to compare him to his retriever. He just opened the door and Richie would run out and run over.
Looking for anything. Madness.
And Richie used to joke, but he's a great guy. And he said to me what he wanted to do was, he was at the first athletic academy in the US, which was a ski school.
Right.
So in the morning, he would ski, they'd go out and they would practice, and then they would go and do their schooling. And then in the late nights, they would go back out again after school.
Right.
So he wanted to do this in football.
Right.
And he said he obviously would like Bobby to do it. And Bobby was ahead of me at Jordan Hill, and I had the highest regard for him, because he's such a wonderful guy and a teacher and great with kids. So when Bobby said to Richie, "Look, I'm in the college and I'm here," he says, "But I've got somebody that would do it for you." He gave me the thing, and Richie set it up. He bought an outdoor centre, and it was for swimming and tennis, and he converted it, and he put, a 3/4 size football park outside AstroTurf, one, and there was one which was about a half size indoor. He built another one, 3/4 size indoor, and we then had 2,000 kids that we got into the program. So there's US played Panama just not so long ago, and one of the squad were all they were all started when they were 8-9 years of age. And that was
proper pathway.
Brendan Aronson that went to Leeds. Mark McKenzie's playing in
Austin Trusty as well.
Christian Pulisic that was at Chelsea, and Austin Trusty.
Aye, so it's amazing, all of them coming through, and that must make you proud, what you're doing,
Yeah, and that's and I went back to my teaching days, and we did in Scotland, and all I did was we never had teams at a young age. Kids that come in, and we had trials, we picked the best 20 kids in each age group from 2 to 14. And after 3 years, the boy that was my assistant that lived there, Phil Carden, again, smashing boy, said to me, "See, when we started 2 years ago, we had 20 kids in each age group. He said, we've now got 60. Why is that?" Because I'm a bad guesser.
So what?
They're absolutely hopeless. None. I said, "So see, when they're hopeless, that's when you say, maybe this is too much." I says, But if none of them are hopeless in their between age 14, we still don't know who's going to develop.
No.
Well, and I gave the paper thing Austin Trusty. Austin Trusty, when he was 11, about the same. He was left-footed. He was an athlete. He could these big long legs. He was like Bambi in ice.
Yeah.
So he couldn't. His coordination and everything wasn't there. So all he did was played with school team. He played with a local amateur team, and then he came to train once a week with us. And I got round all the teams and I made sure we took them a night that suited them. And we had these with 20 in Group A, 20 in Group B, and 20 in Group C after 3 years. It just grew. And that was it. And there's now 40 odd players have gone pro, and over 250 have got college scholarship. There's a big thing in America.
Yeah.
And I've tried to say to people, you don't, it's like when a doctor's a clever guy at school, it's nobody, none of the teachers that make you clever. You know,
Just
an environment that you enjoy your learning and want more. And as coaches for young players, we don't make players. We environments that want to do it.
Give them the environment, 100%. But no, it's fantastic. It's just running through everything and seeing how your career's panned out. And I mean, what are you doing with yourself now? Are you still carrying on with this, or are you relaxed now, or what's the plan?
Get to an age where people, the younger ones, want to do it themselves. And that stage that if you go in, and the background that I have is you end up getting too involved into their liking.
But no, I mean,
people keep
sorry. People what? Sorry.
Sorry.
Keep in touch. People keep in touch. We said.
Yeah, and
you
know, the likes I still keep in touch with a lot of the players. David Moyes was, played for Dunfermline, and with David. The young players over in America are the ones now that are on to me, looking for an opportunity, or having a bad time and help. Because sometimes somebody you want to open, but you can't do it publicly now. Everything comes out criticism. So if they have a problem, I'm here if they need me.
It's great, Iain. It's great. And you're giving something back, I mean, what an illustrious career, But listen, thank you so much, right? Thanks so much for coming on the podcast. I'll speak to you off air. I'll end the podcast now, and if anybody liked it, they can do the usual, like, subscribe, etc. Right, Iain?
Right, that's great, son.
Thanks, my man. Cheers, right? Speak to that. Right, I think I'm still recording. Hold on. There we go.